all those moments will be lost in time.
Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So on Monday I talked about this weird ass case. If you haven't seen the video, I strongly suggest you watch it. If you don't want to watch it, the basic gist is this couple, the Barnetts, adopted a girl named Natalia from Ukraine, and she was supposedly 8 years old, but the couple, especially the wife, is now alleging that she's actually a 22-year-old and she was able to hide that she's 22 because she has a condition that makes her 3 feet tall. That's where we're at right now. However, of course, as always, as soon as I post a video, new updates come out, and honestly, since there were so many unanswered questions, I figured we could look at the new information that's being listed because it's frankly crazier than before, which is hard to believe, and you guys know I don't really do follow-ups all that often, but here I thought it was interesting. I'm going to skip over the details that we already know, but I will link the article down below if you want to read it in its entirety. Guys, quick note before I get started. In this video, I will often be referring to the age 22. The reason I do that is because when they first adopted her, they believed she was 8, but now we're trying to discern how old she was when she was adopted. So when I say 22 present tense, I don't mean today, I just mean at the time that they adopted her. At this point, she'd be about 30, but we'll discuss that later on in the video. So a lot of you in my prior video mentioned the movie The Orphan and how the plot of this story pretty much mirrors the plot of the film The Orphan, and this article actually mentions that, saying, if the premise sounds familiar, that's because it's virtually the exact plot of 2009 big screen chiller Orphan, where a pigtailed youngster tries to murder her family when it's revealed she's 33. But as far-fetched as it sounds, this is the astonishing defense put forward by a mom of 3 and parenting author shockingly accused of felony neglect for abandoning her adopted daughter. Christine Barnett, 45, and her ex-husband Michael Barnett, 43, are alleged to have dumped Ukrainian-born Natalia Grace at an apartment in Lafayette before moving to Canada. We already know. Christine and Michael agreed to the emergency adoption of Ukrainian-born Natalia Grace in May 2010. This photo shows Natalia in September 2012. Her original birth certificate made her 9, but a court would later determine that she was in fact 23 when this picture was taken. Natalia, pictured days after being collected from her Florida adoption center May 2010 by the Barnetts, soon had her new parents suspicious as Natalia had her period and an adult vocabulary for a 7-year-old. Natalia, pictured being homeschooled in December 2010. Christine Barnett claims Natalia tried pushing her onto an electric fence, poured bleach into her coffee, and threatened to stab the Barnetts in their sleep. Police say the girl was left to fend for herself for 3 years despite having a rare form of dwarfism that means that she's 3 feet tall and has problems walking. But in an exclusive interview with Daily Mail TV at an undisclosed location, Christine insists there's a major flaw in their case. Natalia was not a 9-year-old, as charging documents claim. She was actually 22. Barnett claims the true victims are her and her family, who were terrorized for years by the mysterious imposter who threatened to stab them in their sleep, pushed her towards an electric fence, and poured bleach in her coffee. The movie The Orphan is exactly what happened. She would make statements and draw pictures saying she wanted to kill family members, roll them up in a blanket, and put them in the backyard, she told Daily Mail TV. So this shit is crazy. She was standing over people in the middle of the night. You couldn't go to sleep. We had to hide all the sharp objects. I saw her putting chemicals, bleach, Windex, something like that in my coffee, and I asked her, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm trying to poison you. The media is painting me to be a child abuser, but there is no child here," said Barnett. Natalia was a woman. She had periods. She had adult teeth. She never grew a single inch, which would happen even with a child with dwarfism. The doctors all confirmed she was suffering with a severe psychological illness, only diagnosed in adults. She was jumping out of moving cars. She was smearing blood on mirrors. She was doing things you could never imagine a little child doing. Before criminal charges were leveled at them on September 11th, Barnett and ex-husband Michael were hailed as exemplary parents who raised child genius Jake Barnett. Honestly, all this new information just serves to confuse me more, because even in this article, though it seems like it's clear that Natalia is 22, why aren't there doctors' records just confirming this? Like, if it's so for sure that she's 22, why aren't there doctors that are connected to the authorities that can check, you know, if she actually is an adult? The Barnetts, experienced foster parents who ran a children's daycare from their Westfield, Indiana home, collected the curly-haired youngster from Florida in May 2010. While living with the Barnetts, Natalia's adoption was completed in November that year. In a frank and tearful interview with Daily Mail TV, Christine Barnett insisted she treated the new addition to her family as if she were her biological child. She had no hesitation in accepting Natalia despite learning she had a bone growth disorder named the word I can't say, dysplasia, which causes short stature, skeletal abnormalities, and problems with vision. I always wanted to have a larger family, and I had very severe complications in my pregnancies and was unable to have more children, Barnett explained. I also, at the time, had a very privileged life. I felt that if I had the ability to help another person in the world, then I wanted to do it. Given just 24 hours to complete an emergency adoption, the couple raced to an adoption center in Florida to sign the paperwork and meet their quote-unquote 6-year-old daughter. They gleaned precious few details of her background. Natalia had been in the US for 2 years, had a Ukrainian birth certificate reading September 4th, 2003, and needed a home immediately because her previous adopted parents suddenly gave her up for undisclosed reasons. Out of compassion for their situation, I didn't want to press them for information on what had gone wrong the moment on. I understand that as a parent who's trying to adopt a child, you probably don't expect the child to be dangerous, right? I don't think anyone adopts a child thinking, oh, they might be a serial killer. However, at the same time, if the prior family all of a sudden gave up the child, you might want to ask why, also so you yourself are prepared, because there are some things that maybe you don't know how to deal with. I'm not talking about saying, oh, this child tried to kill us, but even if it were for the medical condition, they might have not had the money to pay for certain things. I would still ask for security, and even for the most basic things, for financial reasons, right? Because you need to know that you can take care of it. I think it's strange that they didn't want to ask anything. Like, I'm sure they probably did it out of the kindness of their hearts, but nonetheless, ask. An Indiana court determined Natalia Barnett was born in 1989. This photo was taken in March 2012. Natalia was extremely nervous. You could see she was going to need a lot of support and care. We did notice immediately in the parking lot that she couldn't walk. There was nothing in the paperwork stating that. Over the next few days, the couple showered Natalia with attention, taking her to Disney World, enjoying ice creams, treats, and playful pillow fights with her 3 brothers to slowly bring her out of her shell. When they took Natalia to a beach for the first time, she did something that would leave the couple speechless. The boys rushed into the water, and Natalia wanted to be carried into the ocean. Michael and myself were physically exhausted, so we asked her to wait a few minutes. With that, she just got up and ran into the ocean. I remember looking at Mike thinking, what's going on? She couldn't walk a second ago, and now she just got up and ran. Okay, this is taking a surprising turn, so she apparently can walk. I didn't know that was part of the scam. So it seems like there actually is confirmation that she is, in fact, 22, which I don't know why they would wait until so far down into the article to mention that tiny little detail that is the confirmation of her age, but it's the Daily Mail, so what can we really expect? Barnett grew more alarmed when she saw the little girl naked for the first time. I was giving her a bath and I noticed that she had full pubic hair. I was so shocked. I had just been told she was a 6-year-old and it was very apparent she wasn't. There were further clues to an apparent deception. Natalia shunned dolls and toys, sought the company of teenage girls, and appeared to use sophisticated vocabulary way beyond someone her age. She didn't have any trace of a foreign accent, and when the family asked a Ukrainian friend to speak in their native language, Natalia couldn't understand or describe her homeland. I have to say the last point about her not having a foreign accent or not describing her homeland, if a child comes to another country early on, they can have no accent. Like me, went to American schools, have an American accent. English isn't my first language. So to me, that's not necessarily a super strong point. And also, if she came to the United States when she was super young, she wouldn't remember Ukraine. At the time, I ran a little school, and I remember she said to me, "These children are exhausting. I don't know how you do it," Barnett went on. I was like, you're supposed to be a child yourself. It was like something another mom would say as she dropped her kids off. It's very hard to decipher how old she is because she has such a unique look. But at that time, I started to believe she was probably a teenager. But I didn't have any regrets. This was what I wanted to do. I felt overwhelming love for her. Barnett says she soon began finding bloody clothing in the trash, suggesting Natalia was having her period and trying to conceal the evidence. She sought out the help of her family physician, who ordered bone density tests to establish Natalia's age. When the results suggested the little girl was indeed at least 14 or older, Barnett says she switched the princess outfits and pink dresses for more appropriate clothes. But as questions swirled around her age and true identity, Natalia's behavior began to deteriorate. With the addition of this information, my opinion is definitely shifting because, like I said before, we didn't have enough information, but the parents looked bad. Now that we have confirmation from the court that she is, in fact, 22, and all of this extra information, we have a very, very different picture. So I'm extremely suspicious of Natalia now. I want to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it doesn't look good on her end now. It really doesn't. Barnett recalls watching aghast on a baby monitor as Natalia attacked a baby boy when she was out of the room. When they attended therapy together, Natalia scoffed at the childish bonding exercises. By 2011, Barnett says that Natalia was smearing bodily fluids on walls, making death threats, and hearing voices as her mental health broke down. Natalia would spend the next year or so being treated for various psychiatric disorders, spending days to weeks at a time at the St. Vincent Indianapolis Stress Center. When Barnett claims she tried to drag her onto an electric fence during a 2012 birthday outing, Natalia was placed long-term at a state-run psychiatric unit because she allegedly posed a risk to others. It was during treatment that Barnett insists Natalia confessed to being far older than she appeared. Barnett presented Daily Mail with a trove of paperwork that appears to confirm her version of events and that healthcare professionals shared her grave concerns. So I don't know how the process went here, but it probably would have been a good idea to bring all that paperwork out in the first place so there wasn't ever really a doubt about her age when you brought this to the public. It would have probably avoided the family a lot of grief. But that being said, Natalia was doing a really bad job at hiding that she was a kid, between saying like, I don't know how you deal with these children, and thinking that the therapy exercises they were doing were childish. It seems like she was outing herself, and I don't know if she was doing it on purpose or, you know, like if the psychiatric issues kind of took charge of that part, but it definitely seems like she wasn't hiding it all that well. Then at LaRue Carter Hospital in Indianapolis in June 2012, staff said she had described how she had tried to kill family members and had no remorse about it, with Natalia going as far to describe it as fun to staff. Most revealing of all is perhaps a letter from the Barnett's primary care physician, Andrew McLaren, MD, dated March 2012, in which he says Natalia's 2003 birth date was clearly inaccurate and that Natalia had made a career out of pretending to be a young child. He said Natalia fooled him, her parents, and other physicians. It was also in 2012 that the police began asking questions, although correspondence reviewed by Daily Mail TV suggests they were trying to establish whether an immigration fraud took place before the Barnetts had any involvement with Natalia. Detective Scott Klaus of the Westfield City Police Department told them via email that he had referred the case to the FBI and ICE because he suspected there was false age reporting prior to Natalia leaving Ukraine. Klaus died of cancer 4 years ago, but Captain James Lilly, a former colleague, told Daily Mail TV that while he vaguely remembered the case, he did not think the FBI pursued it further. In June 2012, the Barnetts successfully applied to Marion County Superior Court in Indianapolis, Indiana, to have Natalia's age corrected so she could receive the appropriate psychiatric treatment for an adult. So I don't know if it's because before there was a lack of information, but I do think that the Oxygen article I read in the Monday episode did this couple pretty dirty, because it did really paint them as guilty, which, to be fair, with the lack of information, yeah, you look guilty if you just see the case in broad strokes of like a family left their child, okay, goodbye. That's different than this child had severe issues that put this family in danger. So now it's clear why they changed her age, and hopefully it's actually true that they changed her age so that she could receive the appropriate psychiatric treatment. In documents seen by Daily Mail TV, Judge Gerald S. Zor accepted the couple's allegations were true and revised Natalia's date of birth to September 4th, 1989, changing her from age 8 to 22. At this stage, Barnett points out Natalia was considered an adult by the state of Indiana and was legally responsible for herself. Even so, Barnett says she and her husband rented an apartment for Natalia when she was discharged from secure psychiatric care in August 2012 and placed under the supervision of state healthcare provider Aspire Indiana. They further helped her get a social security number, apply for benefits, food stamps, and an ID. When Natalia caused problems at the property and was evicted, they stepped in again to prevent her from being homeless, renting a new apartment for her in Lafayette, Tippecanoe County. Barnett said she was communicating daily with Natalia and even came up with a plan for Natalia to enroll in college to get her high school diploma and study cosmetology. I said, I've been taking care of you here as an adult. I will do one more year of financial aid, the exact same thing I'm doing for all my children, she said. I co-signed the lease and paid for the rent up front for a year. I did everything you would do when you send your child off to college. I helped her with groceries and bought furniture at Target for her. I was optimistic she had a concrete plan for her life. She had food stamps, she had social security income for the rest of her things. She had demonstrated she was able to live. By 2013, Barnett had published a memoir about Jacob, now age 21, entitled The Spark, A Mother's Story of Nurturing, Genius, and Autism. That same year, they moved to Canada so Jacob could attend the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics in Waterloo, Ontario, leaving Natalia behind at her rented apartment. By then, however, Barnett says Natalia had vanished and stopped returning her calls. Barnett told Daily Mail she feared Natalia had stopped taking her medication and was probably posing as a child again for another unsuspecting family. I'd found a little pink dress in her closet and a little pink bicycle parked beside her house, she said. I would have forced her back into treatment, but I couldn't do that any longer because she was an adult. She discontinued communication with me. What I did get was a letter in the mail stating that she had changed Michael from the beneficiary of her social security income to someone else. The more we find out, the more Natalia seems calculating, especially now that we know that she's an adult and that she in fact can be calculating in an adult fashion. I'm also very curious as to what these psychiatric problems are. Not necessarily a diagnosis, but are these psychiatric problems what make her pose as a child, or are these psychiatric problems what make her be violent, and her posing as a child is just for financial reasons? You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of wondering where the posing for a child comes from, whether it's just for financial reasons or there's something additional pushing her. 2013. The last time we spoke on the phone, she told me she was cooking spaghetti for her new family. I did not abandon anyone. I went to Canada to further my son's education. These accusations are absolutely devastating. The Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department, meanwhile, presents a very different version of events. A September 11th affidavit of probable cause obtained by Daily Mail TV states that an expert at the Peyton Manning Children's Hospital named Dr. Riggs carried out bone density tests on Natalia in June 2010. It concluded she was aged approximately 8. A further skeletal test carried out 2 years later at the same facility concluded she was around 11 years old. So one point that was actually brought up via Twitter DM by Gigi Spill the Tea was that these bone density tests, the important thing is whether these bone density tests took into account her dwarfism, in the sense of, are they comparing this bone density to the bone density of an adult and child dwarf, or are they comparing them to adult who doesn't suffer from dwarfism? You know what I mean? So that was an interesting point. I mean, ideally, they would obviously compare it to someone who has her same issue, because otherwise you're comparing apples and oranges. It just wouldn't make sense. The affidavit reveals that it was Natalia herself who told the police that she had been left alone when her adoptive parents moved to Canada, with cops concluding she was a reliable and credible witness. It does not explain, however, why detectives waited 5 years to put the allegations to Michael Barnett, who divorced Christine in 2014 and has settled back in Indiana. Right when I thought we had some kind of resolution, nothing. I swear this case is gonna make me lose my marbles. I thought it was confirmed that she's 22, but now they still seem to not have reached a consensus with the other doctors. So I just want them to hire 3 separate doctors, have them do tests separately, see what they all conclude, and we need to get a consensus, because this to and fro of yes, she's 22, no, she's not, yes, she is mind-boggling. It doesn't seem like it should be this hard to figure out. The document says that when an officer spoke with Michael on September 5th, he admitted he knew all along Natalia was a minor child when she was allegedly abandoned. This we already knew. Furthermore, the affidavit adds Michael Barnett admitted Christine Barnett told Natalia to tell others Natalia looks young but was actually 22. It really does seem like Christine Barnett does really believe that Natalia's 22, and it's not for unfounded reasons. She did provide a Daily Mail TV, and we're gonna have to take them at their word for that, with quote-unquote proof from other doctors that Natalia is 22. So I genuinely am so lost at this point. Despite the possibility that she is now 30 years old, because the 22 was back in 2012 or 2013. Natalia's full court records will remain sealed until a court decides otherwise, because adoption cases are treated as confidential. She last saw her adopted father was when the final chapter in their painful, confusing relationship played out at Tippecanoe Circuit Court in 2016. There, a couple named Antoine and Cynthia Mans unexpectedly applied to become Natalia's guardians, which meant proving she was a minor and restoring her original birth date. The Barnetts filed an objection claiming Natalia was an adult. Records are not publicly available, but Daily Mail has established that a judge ordered a fresh hearing to establish Natalia's age, with Michael Barnett and a number of experts giving evidence. So then Christine Barnett said, "I've been cooperative the whole time. I've been truthful with people the whole time," she said, choking back tears. "I'm being charged by the state of Indiana for crimes against a child when the state of Indiana has determined multiple times that Natalia was an adult," added Christine, who asked for her location to remain confidential over threats her family have received. "From day one, this was a mission of love, but when you bring a child into your home, you expect them to be a child. To be accused of this is unconscionable to me. It's just horrifying." And that's the end of that. I still think this case is unsolved in a lot of ways, because as much as we seem to have proof from both sides now, there's still no consensus on which proof is actually reliable, which is crazy. And I'm glad they're going to try and establish her age, because honestly, that's all we really need to do to kind of try and figure out at least the legality of things. This case is so absolutely bizarre. And one thing I will say is that from what I've read, I really don't feel like the parents were trying to abandon Natalia. If we give them the benefit of the doubt and we believe the events that Christine mentioned where they went through this whole process of psychiatric hospitals, this whole process of getting Natalia tested. You know, if they've done all of this and they even paid for her things the same way that they're doing for all of their other children, I don't think they would just up and leave her after, you know, doing everything they could for her. It wouldn't make sense to me. But at the same time, I just don't understand why the first couple wouldn't have said anything if she was already displaying behaviors of an older child or like dangerous behaviors. I feel like that's just negligent for whoever else might adopt her after. So like, I'd also want to know from the first adoptive parents what actually happened there, because I think that might shed some light as well. And as for the people who want to adopt her next, I would be super careful because it seems like there are a lot of issues there. Whether she's 22 or not, whoever is going to adopt her has to be very prepared for, you know, the type of issues that Natalia has, and to make sure that they can actually take care of her and those issues, whether it's time or money, like stated prior. I'm tending now to think that the parents don't seem as guilty as they did in the first one, if we believe their account of the events. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let's get right into the fan art.